Chapter 1. Jessie hovered in the doorway of Dylan's home studio, holding up two outfits like a contestant on a game show. "Babe," she announced dramatically, "black skirt with calf-high boots and a scarf? Or floral dress, leather jacket and flats? This is life or death, Dylan. Choose wisely." Dylan didn't even look up from his editing station at first, though. In his defense, he had been trimming B-roll for hours. "Jess, my family loves you, especially my mum. She talked to you once and she's ready to adopt you. Wear whatever you want. That's easy for you to say." Jessie huffed, lowering both outfits. "This is my first Thanksgiving with your family. My first real holiday with anyone, honestly. I want to make a good impression." That finally got him out of his chair. He walked to her, softening immediately when he noticed her chewing her bottom lip. "Hey, Jess, are you nervous?" She gave a tiny nod, staring at the floor like it suddenly had the answers. He tipped her chin up so their eyes met, then kissed her slow, reassuring. "I'm sorry. I should have taken it more seriously. You're right, it is a big deal. And the dress will look gorgeous on you. The boots would destroy my mum on impact, but the dress is perfect." A small smile cracked through her worry. "Thanks. And I'm sorry too. I wasn't trying to throw a hissy fit. I know." Dylan grinned. "Now come on. We still need to hit the store before we leave. I'll get ready." Jessie rewarded him with another kiss, this one more playful. More them, before she disappeared to change, with that $1,000,000 smile that always made his heart skip. The hour drive from Santa Cruz to Fremont felt shorter than usual. Jessie's nerves translated, as always, into singing loud, theatrical singing with big diaphragm support like she was back in the campus theatre building, warming up before a show. Dylan didn't mind. Her voice had been the soundtrack of their entire friendship. Halfway up Highway 1, she belted the high note of some Broadway song with dramatic hand choreography. "The hand acting is new," Dylan teased. "It helps me get into character." She flicked her imaginary cape. "What character? Woman facing boyfriend's family, the musical? Honestly, I'd watch that." He laughed and reached over to squeeze her hand. "You're going to be fine." She looked out the window at the coastline, humming again. He stole a glance at her hair, catching the late autumn sun, eyes restless but excited, and he felt it, that widening warmth in his chest. If only she knew he'd felt it long before this. Chapter 2. "Dylan, I know that song," Dylan thought, when Jessie launched into her second dramatic number in a row. He looked over. She glanced at him mid-note, gave him a quick bright smile, then went right back to belting. God, she was sexy when she sang. Completely unself-conscious, completely herself. The memory train left the station before he could stop it. Back in high school, Dylan had been, well, a nerd. Not the pocket protector kind, more the kid constantly carrying a camera and a car magazine. Photography and cars were his entire personality from age 3 onward. He wasn't just into them, he was obsessed. His mum loved telling people that toddler Dylan could identify every car on the freeway, and by middle school, he could take apart a camera faster than most adults. He had other interests too, though he kept those to himself. Growing up, he'd always been drawn to women who embraced femininity with a kind of fierce, deliberate pride, trans women especially. Their courage, their dedication to becoming who they truly were. It fascinated him, moved him. But his crushes lived quietly in the same mental corner as undeveloped film kept in the dark, where no one could judge them. College had been a crossroads, multiple scholarship offers, multiple dreams. He ultimately chose photography over automotive design. Cars were his passion, but he didn't want an industry job to ruin that. Photography offered freedom, it offered stories. It also, though he didn't know it yet, offered Jessie. Santa Cruz wasn't too far from home, but far enough his mum couldn't drop by unannounced. Plus, the natural scenery was perfect for film workwoods, beaches, cliffs, underwater shoots, drone opportunities. He had it all planned. Only the housing office had other plans. On move-in day, he was supposed to be placed in a triple with 2 other freshmen. Instead, thanks to a paperwork error, his room was given away. The only available space left was in special housing, a phrase vague enough to terrify him. He imagined ending up with a frazzled single mother and 3 screaming toddlers who would use his equipment as playground props. He walked into the unit, bracing for chaos. Instead, there was a skinny guy with shoulder-length hair in the kitchen, trying to open a box with scissors he was clearly afraid of using. "Surprise," the guy said cheerfully when he noticed him. "I'm Jessie. Welcome to whatever this place is." Dylan nearly sagged with relief. "Hey, I'm Dylan." Jessie had a smile like warm light. "Are you a freshman too?" Where are you from? Fremont, Dylan answered. And yeah, freshman. Me too. Jesse adjusted a glass jar he'd been unpacking, placing it exactly parallel to another one. When they told me my file got mixed up and I was assigned to special housing, Dylan confessed, I really thought I'd be living with a single mum and 3 kids. Jesse snorted. Oh, please, if anyone in this arrangement looks like a single mum with 3 kids, it's me. I even brought Tupperware. They got my file mixed up also, so here we are. Then, suddenly a bit shy, he added, Dylan, just so you know, I'm gay. If that's a problem, you can request a transfer. It's 2018, Dylan said. Nobody cares. And even if they did, I wouldn't. Jesse looked ridiculously relieved. Great. Okay, any pet peeves or rules? I'm a film and photography major. I'll have tripods and stands everywhere. If they don't fit in my room, can I use the patio storage? Of course. And no wild parties? Friends are fine, but I don't want my equipment to grow legs and walk away. Jesse nodded vigorously. Bless you. I hate parties. Loud people make me want to evaporate. And same for me, you can have company, just not chaos. One more thing, Jesse added, suddenly formal. I'm neat. Like, aggressively neat. If I annoy you, tell me. Dylan laughed. My mum and sister are neat freaks. I'm used to it. Jesse visibly relaxed. Good. Okay, we're gonna get along. And they did fast. Over the next few months, they became inseparable. Dylan learned Jesse was a theatre major, minoring in costume design. He knew nothing about theatre, but he admired Jesse's all-in enthusiasm for his craft. Jesse dragged him to a Renaissance fair once. Dylan dressed up. Jesse nearly cried from joy. They spent the entire day arguing about whether a turkey leg counted as a historically accurate prop. When Dylan shot car videos for his social media, Jesse stood on the roadside, holding cameras, and trying not to flinch every time Dylan sped past. He complained loudly about wind messing up his hair. Dylan caught it on camera. Jesse claimed emotional damage. They were opposites. Total opposites. But somehow, they fit. Chapter 3. The fundraiser, the first rainstorm of the quarter, hit Santa Cruz on a Wednesday, which meant everyone on campus was either aggressively cheerful about it or absolutely miserable. Jesse fell into the first category. He claimed rain made everything feel more cinematic. Dylan fell into the latter. Rain meant slippery roads and mud. Not a good combo for his expensive camera equipment. They were on their way to Jesse's costume design class, weaving through a crowd of soaked students, shaking out umbrellas like disgruntled birds. Jesse held his sketchbook over his head like a shield. Where's your umbrella? Dylan asked. I don't believe in umbrellas, Jesse said proudly. Dylan shook his head, but he smiled. You're gonna catch a cold. Oh please, I've survived calculus. Nothing can kill me. Jesse darted ahead, dancing around puddles. Dylan followed more carefully, watching him with the kind of fondness he hoped was subtle. It wasn't. Later that evening, when Dylan was sprawled on the couch reviewing footage from his cinematography class, Jesse poked his head into the living room like a nervous meerkat. Dylan, he sang, which was never a good sign. Dylan paused the video. What did you break? Nothing. What did you sign us up for? Jesse slipped inside, holding his binder as if it contained state secrets. Okay, so the theatre department is doing a fundraiser. And one of the ideas is to produce a short film. Written, costumed, directed, fully student-made. And I may have possibly volunteered you as the cinematographer, /editor, /camera operator, /consultant for literally everything involving a lens. Dylan blinked. I'm sorry. Jesse blurted. They were brainstorming, and someone said, what if we make a film? And then someone else said, we don't have anyone who knows cameras. And then I heard myself say, I do. My roommate can shoot anything. But like in a professional way, not weird. And now everyone's excited and plotting and... Jess. And if you don't want to, I'll just tell them you were tragically busy or had food poisoning or got abducted by a... Jess. Jesse stopped rambling. Dylan grinned. I'd love to help. Jesse blinked, stunned. Wait, really? Yeah. I always wanted to try shooting fiction. And you're excited, so... Yeah, let's do it. Jesse broke into a smile so bright it could power half the campus. Dylan, you're the best. Before Dylan could react, Jesse hugged him, quick and warm, then immediately pretended the moment hadn't happened by flipping open his binder. So, the script. We're thinking something short but dramatic. A character piece. Something emotional with good visuals. Okay, Dylan said, leaning closer. Show me. Over the next few weeks, their schedules intertwined in a way that felt natural, dangerously natural. Dylan found himself spending more time in the costume workshop, dwarfed by dress forms and fabric bolts. The theatre kids teased him relentlessly. "Welcome back, film boy," one of them called as he walked in. "He's not film boy," Jessie corrected, marching over. "He's our film boy." Dylan tried not to enjoy that sentence too much. The script evolved quickly. Jessie had a talent for shaping scenes, for making dialogue sound alive. Dylan hadn't known that about him. They spent hours discussing character arcs, pacing, shot lists. Jessie doodled costume designs in the margins, while Dylan diagrammed camera setups. "What if we frame it so the main character feels small in the beginning?" Jessie suggested one evening in the campus cafe, like with wider shots and a lot of empty space. Dylan froze. It was exactly what he'd been thinking. Yes! And then the shots tighten as the character finds themselves. Jessie beamed. "See? This is why I signed you up." Dylan tried to hide how flattered he felt. The first day of filming became a minor campus event. Students showed up to watch because theatre kids had no concept of subtlety, and Jessie was playing the lead, which meant Jessie was in costume. Dylan didn't know what he expected. Maybe something simple, neutral. He wasn't prepared for the sight of Jessie stepping out of the dressing room. A soft dress, loose waves in his hair, makeup light, gentle, surprisingly natural. Jessie looked nervous, but he also looked beautiful, not performative, not pretending, just right. Dylan felt something drop in his chest like missing a step on a staircase. Something warm flooded his face. Jessie twirled sheepishly. "Too much?" "No," Dylan said before he could help himself. "No, it's good. Really good." Jessie tried to laugh it off, but his cheeks pinked. "It's just for the character. She's supposed to be discovering herself." "Yeah," Dylan said quietly. "Makes sense." But watching Jessie walk to the set, dress brushing his knees, posture shifting, Dylan couldn't shake the feeling that the role wasn't the only thing being discovered. Jessie, meanwhile, saw Dylan in a new way too. The moment the camera was in Dylan's hands, everything about him sharpened. He was confident, focused, issuing directions with this easy authority Jessie had never seen before. "Jess, take one step left. Slow. Perfect. All right, team reset lighting. Hold still. You look amazing in this shot." That last one nearly short-circuited Jessie. He tried to act unaffected, but every time Dylan leaned in to adjust a lens or brush a stray hair away from Jessie's face, he felt his heartbeat stutter. Dylan was cool and steady, and somehow effortlessly charming when he was in work mode. Jessie didn't know if he wanted to hug him or shove him into a closet, maybe both. In the quiet moments between takes, their glances kept catching small, fragile, electric. Jessie wondered if Dylan noticed how different he felt in the dress, how natural, how right. Dylan wondered if Jessie knew how stunning he looked, how the line between role and reality blurred every time Jessie smiled in character. Neither of them said a word. They were too afraid. The project was good. Their friendship was good. Their lives were good. And neither wanted to risk breaking any of it. But every day, the feelings grew louder. And neither of them not yet knew what to do with that. Chapter 4. Strange Gravity, the fundraiser film, wrapped shooting on a Friday evening, just as the sun dipped behind the redwoods. Jessie stood on the loading ramp outside the theatre building, holding a cup of lukewarm cocoa, while Dylan packed the last of his equipment. Campus was buzzing, with weekend energy students skateboarding past, someone blasting EDM from a distant dorm balcony, the scent of cold air and eucalyptus drifting through the courtyard. Jessie watched Dylan wind up a cable, with that quiet focus he had when working. He always looked so calm when handling his gear like the camera grounded him. Jessie envied that. He felt like he was floating half the time these days, especially after filming. He'd worn dresses before for shows, wigs, makeup. But something about this project had been different. This time, the echo of the costume stayed with him after he took it off, as if the character wasn't just a character, but a door he'd cracked open without meaning to. He didn't know how to talk about it, so he didn't. Instead, he sipped his cocoa and listened to Dylan hum under his breath off key, but in a comforting, Dylan-ish way. "You okay?" Dylan asked suddenly, loading his tripod into the case. Jessie startled. "Me? Yeah, totally. Why, do I look sick?" "My cousin sneezed on me last week. Do I look like pale?" Dylan blinked. "Jess, you look fine. I just asked." "Oh." Jessie stared into his cup. "Okay, good." Dylan tilted his head. "You've been quiet." Jessie swallowed. "Just thinking." "About what?" Jessie shrugged. The film. School. The future? Maybe. He glanced away. Nothing scary, just, stuff. Dylan didn't push. He never pushed. That was the problem, and the comfort. Well, Dylan said gently, the film came out great. Almost entirely because you carried the whole thing. I did not, Jessie protested. You did, Dylan insisted, locking the case. And the way you transformed for the role? That was incredible. Jessie nearly choked on cocoa. Transformed? Like what, magically? Like a Pokemon? Dylan snorted. Yes, Jessie. Exactly like a Pokemon. Jessie swatted him lightly with his scarf. Shut up. But secretly, something warm sparked in his chest. Dylan thought he looked incredible. He tried to hide the blush by drinking more cocoa, forgetting it had cooled into vaguely chocolate-flavoured sadness. Walking back to their apartment later that night, their shoulders occasionally brushed. Not intentionally, not exactly, but neither pulled away. The air felt charged. Jessie kept replaying Dylan's words in his head. The way you transformed, he didn't fully understand why it mattered so much, why it felt like it touched something deep and fragile and frighteningly real. Beside him, Dylan kept sneaking small glances watching Jessie walk, watching how his expression changed from thoughtful to distracted to quietly anxious. Dylan didn't understand his own reaction either. He'd seen Jessie in costumes before, sure, but this time had been different. Something about the dress, the softness of his posture, the calm confidence that emerged during certain scenes. It had taken Dylan's breath away. He told himself to stop thinking about it. He didn't. Back at the apartment, Jessie kicked off his shoes and flopped onto the couch, letting out a dramatic groan. I'm dead, he declared. You're not dead, Dylan said, turning on the lamp. You're just tired. Tired as death's stylish cousin, Dylan laughed. Okay, drama. I'll heat up leftovers. Bless you, Jessie mumbled into a pillow. Dylan disappeared into the kitchen, clattering dishes and humming again another off-key, comforting tune. Jessie watched him from the couch, watched the outline of his shoulders, the way he moved with this easy confidence when he wasn't thinking about it. Something tightened in Jessie's chest, not painful. Exactly. More like gravity shifting, pulling him towards something he couldn't name. He sat up. Hey, Dylan? Yeah? Do you ever feel like you're supposed to be someone else, but you don't know who yet? Dylan froze with the fridge door open. Like, identity stuff? Jessie nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess. Sometimes, Dylan said quietly. Not all the time, but sometimes. Jessie stared at his hands. I felt really comfortable during filming, more than I expected. And I don't know if that means something or if it's just, acting. Dylan came over, leaning his hip against the counter. He didn't look scared. He didn't look confused. He looked steady. Well, he said gently, you don't have to figure it all out tonight. Yeah, Jessie whispered. I know. Later, after dinner, they sat together editing the first batch of footage. Jessie leaned against the back of the couch, and Dylan leaned slightly toward him. Every time their elbows touched, something flickered between them small, bright, dangerous. Jessie pretended his heart wasn't racing. Dylan pretended he wasn't watching Jessie's reflection in the computer screen instead of the footage. Both of them felt it. Neither dared to say it. Not yet. Because even though something new was forming between them, slow and warm and terrifying, they were scared to breathe on it the wrong way and watch the whole thing collapse. So they sat together in the soft lamplight, shoulders brushing, hearts inching closer without permission. And the gravity between them kept growing. Chapter 5. Quiet transformations the week after filming wrapped. Jessie didn't announce anything. Not to Dylan, not to their friends, not even to himself. But little things started shifting. At first, Dylan didn't catch it. Jessie had always been stylish in a chaotic theatre major way. But over time, the pieces added up small, soft, unmistakable. Jessie started dressing a little more neutral still himself. Still comfortable, but different. Tighter silhouettes, softer fabrics, sweaters that draped rather than clung, jeans with a subtle taper. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just intentional. Then came the hair. A few highlights near the front, faint, sunlit streaks that caught the afternoon light when Jessie sat near the window, reading lines for class. Dylan found himself staring more than once, pretending he wasn't. Then came the eyebrows cleaned up, subtly shaped. Dylan noticed immediately. Of course he did. He'd spent hours filming Jessie's face. He could notice a pixel out of place. Then came the legs. Jessie would step out of the shower humming, towel wrapped around his chest and waist, skin smooth and freshly shaved, the kind of barely there stubble removal only someone who cared deeply about how they felt in their own skin would bother with. Then came the makeup. Just a whisper-tinted moisturizer, a touch of mascara, maybe a gloss if Jessie felt brave that day. To anyone else, he looked exactly the same. But Dylan wasn't anyone else. He noticed everything. One night, Jessie sat sprawled on the couch in tiny sleep shorts and one of Dylan's old film club t-shirts, claiming it was laundry day, even though Dylan suspected he wore it because it smelled like him. Jessie watched lazily as Dylan cooked dinner pan sizzling, shoulders flexing under his fitted tee, hair tied back with absolute zero awareness of how good he looked, doing the simplest things. And Jessie was gone. He covered his mouth with his hand like he was blocking a sneeze, but really, it was to hide the ridiculous grin spreading across his face. "Why are you smiling like that?" Dylan asked, flipping a chicken breast in the pan. "I'm not smiling," Jessie said, smiling even harder. "You're staring. I'm just observing." Jessie waved a hand. "I'm a theatre major. We observe. You're observing my butt again, aren't you?" Jessie nearly choked on air. I mean, I wasn't just now, I wasn't." Dylan laughed, turning back to the stove. "Relax. I'm kidding." Jessie sank deeper into the couch, face burning. He was not relaxed. It went both ways, though Jessie didn't know it. Dylan found himself looking at Jessie in ways that made it hard to breathe. Soft makeup, the delicate arch of his newly shaped eyebrows, the way his hair framed his face, the way he curled his legs under himself when he sat. It wasn't loud femininity. It wasn't even intentional feminine presentation. But it was Jessie gravitating towards something that felt right. And Dylan found it devastatingly attractive. One night, Jessie walked past him in the hallway, wearing a soft, oversized sweater and leggings he swore were for rehearsal movement practice. Dylan had to physically bite the inside of his cheek to keep his jaw from dropping. He almost walked into a wall. Luckily, Jessie didn't notice. Or maybe Jessie noticed everything and pretended not to. That was the dangerous part. Both possibilities felt true. They lay in their separate rooms at night-thin apartment walls, doing nothing to stop the quiet, restless thoughts. Jessie would stare at the ceiling, replaying every small moment Dylan had touched his shoulder, or adjusted his collar, or said something soft and earnest that stuck with him all day. Sometimes Jessie touched his own cheek, wondering why he felt prettier lately, wondering why Dylan's compliments made his heart ache in a way they hadn't before. Meanwhile, Dylan lay in his bed thinking about Jessie's laugh, the way Jessie tucked hair behind his ear, the faint shimmer of lip gloss, the gentle lines of his face becoming more defined, yet softer somehow. Dylan turned onto his side, staring at the wall separating them, knowing Jessie was on the other side, awake, probably thinking too much, probably thinking about him. He pressed his palm flat against the cool paint. Sometimes when Jessie couldn't sleep there was a soft tap on the wall, almost too light to notice. A simple, wordless, "You awake too?" Dylan always answered back with the same tap. They never talked about it. It was safer not to. The opportunity arrived on an ordinary Wednesday, Jessie's worst day of classes, which meant Dylan made him tea and left it on his desk like a supportive roommate/secretly obsessed best friend. Jessie burst through the apartment door at 4 p.m., eyes wide, breathing fast. "Dylan," he gasped. Dylan stood up immediately. "What? What happened? Are you okay?" Jessie thrust his phone forward like it was radioactive. I got an email." "Okay. From a company." "Okay. A theatre company." Dylan blinked. "Jess, which theatre company?" Jessie swallowed hard. "The theatre company. The one in New York. The one that did the world tour of Siren's Wake. The one that got like 20 Tony nominations." Dylan's heart skipped several beats. "Jessie, are you joking?" Jessie shook his head violently. "They want me to audition. In person. In New York." Dylan's jaw actually dropped. "You're serious? They want to cast a new actor for the touring company. For the world tour. The world tour, Dylan. Oh my God," Dylan whispered. "Jessie, that's incredible. They want to fly me out next month." Jessie's voice cracked. "Next month." Dylan walked forward, slow, shocked, awestruck. "Jess, that's huge. That's life-changing." Jessie nodded, still frozen. "I know." Dylan grabbed him by the shoulders, eyes bright. "I'm so proud of you." Jessie's breath stuttered. "You are?" "Of course I am." Jessie's eyes softened, and for a moment Dylan felt the gravity between them pull tighter than ever. The moment felt almost like a confession one neither of them dared to say out loud. The air between them buzzed. Then Jessie breathed out, shaky. I'm scared. Dylan squeezed his shoulders. I know, but I want to go. I know, but everything's going to change. Dylan hesitated, just long enough for Jessie to notice. Then, yeah, Dylan said quietly. It might. Jessie swallowed again. Dylan's hands stayed on his arms. Neither of them moved. Neither of them knew what the future held. But they both felt something shifting, something that had been building quietly, slowly, beautifully. And now, with New York on the horizon, everything was about to get a lot more complicated. Chapter 6. Between the lens and the truth, the next few weeks felt like living inside a bittersweet countdown. The excitement of Jessie's New York audition filled the apartment like sunlight, but the sadness, the quiet ache of knowing their days like this were numbered, lingered under everything, soft and constant, like background music you can't quite tune out. Jessie spent hours practicing his script in the living room, pacing back and forth, whispering lines under his breath, as if they were secrets. He moved differently now, softer, more deliberate, more like the roles he'd stepped into recently had unlocked something he couldn't tuck away anymore. Meanwhile, Dylan threw himself into updating his portfolio. He redesigned his Car Channel website, rebuilt his photography landing page, and organized all his reels. But whenever his brain needed a break, he clicked back to the fundraiser film. The way Jessie looked on camera, the way Jessie felt through the lens, the way Dylan had felt while filming him. He watched that footage more often than he'd ever admit. One evening, Jessie perched on the bar stool like a cat observing its human, chin resting on his hands as he watched Dylan chop vegetables. The apartment smelled like garlic and butter and the faint sweetness of Jessie's hair cream. Hey, Dylan? Jessie asked, voice soft. Dylan glanced back, knife stilling. Yeah? Jessie swung his legs. I need a favor. Dylan smiled. I love when you say that. It usually means you're about to disrupt my entire life. Jessie laughed, nervous and bright. Not this time. New York wants a portfolio. Updated photos. Maybe a video reel. You want me to shoot it? If you're not too busy? Jessie added quickly. You don't have to. Jess. Dylan set the knife down and leaned his hands on the counter. I'd be honored. Jessie's shoulders dropped with relief, and that tiny shift, the softness of it, made Dylan's heart thud harder than it should have. Thank you, Jessie murmured. Really, I want this to feel like me. Something in the way he said me made Dylan pause. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Dylan spent the next 2 nights planning an ambitious shoot, a scene in the redwoods, late afternoon sun filtering like gold dust, a sequence on the boardwalk, Jessie standing centered while crowds blurred past, a cliffside overlook with wind in his hair. And finally, Dylan's favorite idea, a small rental boat at sunset, Jessie framed by the glowing horizon. Jessie lit up at each location, but his smile got shy when he said, "There's one more thing." Dylan raised a brow. Yeah? Jessie inhaled. I want to present as a girl. For these. For the photos. For the real. Silence. Not tense. Not shocked. Just full. Dylan blinked once, twice, and something deep inside him shifted, like a camera lens clicking into perfect focus. Oh, he said softly. Jess. Yeah. Yes. Of course. Jessie's cheeks flushed pink. Really? You don't think it's weird? Not even a little. Dylan swallowed hard. I think it's perfect. The air changed between them, warm, delicate, charged. Jessie looked relieved, but also something else. Hopeful. The photo shoot they started in the woods. Jessie wore a soft cream dress under a cardigan. Hair curled just slightly. Makeup subtle, but glowing. He wasn't playing a role this time. He was letting that gentle, tentative feminine self surface, with each step, each pose, each breath. Dylan tried to stay professional. He really did. But every time Jessie laughed softly, every time the wind swept hair across his cheek, every time he adjusted his cardigan with that shy, feminine touch, Dylan felt his chest tighten. Look up toward the light, Dylan instructed. Jessie did, and the sunlight framed his face like a halo. Dylan forgot to breathe. Jessie noticed. On the boardwalk, Jessie stood still while the crowd flowed past like water around a stone. Dylan backed up to capture the motion blur. People stared at Jessie, not rudely, just curious, drawn in, like he was something luminous. Jessie's heart raced. Are they looking because it's odd? No, Dylan murmured, lowering his camera to meet Jessie's eyes. They're looking because you're beautiful. Jesse blinked rapidly, lips parting. He looked away before Dylan saw too much, but Dylan had already seen it. The final location was the small rented boat, gently rocking in the late summer breeze. Jesse sat at the bow, hair tousled, dress brushing his thighs. Dylan filmed in silence, real silence, breath-held silence, because everything about Jesse in that moment felt fragile and breathtaking and undeniable. Jesse's nerves buzzed under his skin. He wasn't just performing, he wasn't pretending, he was being, fully. He wanted Dylan to see him, but he was terrified Dylan would. "Jess," Dylan said softly behind the camera. "Look at me." Jesse turned, and Dylan's world rearranged itself. The golden light hit Jesse's face. His lips parted, his eyes softened. His entire being glowed with something tender and brave and new. Dylan stepped forward, lowering the camera slowly. Jesse's breath caught. "Is everything okay?" "No," Dylan whispered. "Not even close." He crossed the small space between them. Jesse's heart hammered. "Dylan," and then Dylan kissed her, softly, carefully, like she was something precious, like he'd wanted to for months, like he finally couldn't stop himself. Jesse froze for a heartbeat, then melted. Warmth bloomed through her chest, spreading from her lips to her fingertips to her very bones. She felt small, delicate, held. She felt wanted. She felt seen. She felt like a girl, for the very first time. When Dylan pulled back, both of them were breathless, eyes wide. Jesse whispered, voice trembling. "Dylan?" He cupped her cheek, thumb brushing lightly. "Yeah?" Jesse swallowed, a shy smile forming. "Do it again." And Dylan did. The sun dipped below the horizon, the boat rocking gently, and for the first time in both their lives, the truth between them wasn't hidden. It was warm. It was real. And it was only the beginning. Chapter 7. The night before everything changed, the air on the water had been cool after their kiss, but neither Jesse nor Dylan felt it. They sat on the small wooden bench by the dock, hands laced together, watching the stars scatter themselves across the sky like spilled diamonds. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Jesse's head rested lightly against Dylan's shoulder, and Dylan occasionally brushed his thumb over the back of Jesse's hand-soft, rhythmic, grounding. Every touch felt like it said 100 things neither dared to voice. The moon hung low and bright over the water, painting Jesse's face in silver. Dylan watched her from the corner of his eye, still not fully believing what had just unfolded between them. Jesse watched the moon too, but her thoughts were far away, not in the sky, but in herself, in the girl she had felt rising inside her during the shoot, during the kiss, during every moment Dylan had looked at her that day like she was something beautiful. She squeezed his hand a little tighter. He squeezed back. They drove home in silence. The radio turned off, the sky shifting from indigo to soft dawn pink. Jessie leaned her forehead against the window, watching the sun rise through the streaks of early morning fog. Dylan glanced at her every few minutes, memorizing her profile, the curve of her lip, the peace and sadness mixed in her eyes. He didn't know this would be the last sunrise they'd watched together for a long time, but Jessie did. She felt it like a cord pulling tight in her chest. Back in the apartment, Jessie packed silently. Just a week of clothes, she told herself, just for the audition. She didn't pack makeup or dresses, she didn't want to jinx anything, didn't want Dylan to notice the choices she almost made. But she knew the truth. She wasn't coming back the same Jessie. Not anymore. Not after that kiss. Not after realizing who she truly was. Jessie swallowed hard as she zipped up her suitcase. She refused to ask Dylan for a ride. She knew if she sat in the passenger seat next to him, she wouldn't be able to walk away at the end. She wouldn't be strong. She wouldn't go. So she quietly called an Uber, voice trembling as she confirmed the time. When she stepped into the living room with her bag, Dylan was waiting there, hands in pockets, exhausted, quiet. "Jess," he said softly. Jessie forced a smile. "It's okay. You don't have to take me." Dylan shook his head. "I wanted to." Jessie's voice wavered. "I know. That's why I didn't let you." And before he could say more, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms tightly around him. It wasn't a friendly hug. It wasn't a casual hug. It was the kind of hug you give when you're saying goodbye to something you want to keep forever. Dylan held her just as tight, burying his face in her shoulder. "You're going to do amazing," he whispered. Jessie's breath hitched. She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. Then she kissed him. Not soft this time. Not cautious. Not exploratory. A kiss full of everything she'd been scared to say out loud. a kiss that held promises and farewells, and something that felt dangerously like love. When they broke apart, Jessie's eyes were wet. Inside her mind, one thought pulsed over and over. When he sees me again, I'll be a full girl. The real me. The me I've been afraid to show him. Dylan brushed his thumb across her cheek, catching a tear. Come back safe, okay? Jessie nodded, unable to speak. The Uber honked outside. She picked up her bag with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. Outside the door, she turned back one last time and saw Dylan standing there, heartbreak written across his face like ink. New York was a blur bright, fast, overwhelming. Jessie auditioned with a fire she didn't know she had. Her voice trembled in the right places. Her movements felt natural, feminine, powerful. She let the real girl inside her step forward fully, for the first time. And the casting team noticed. They called the next morning. She got the role. Jessie pressed her hand to her mouth, trembling with disbelief and joy, before the weight of reality crashed over her like cold water. The company wanted her to start immediately. Rehearsals started Monday. The tour began in 6 weeks. She wouldn't be able to fly back to Santa Cruz. Not even for a day. She would be leaving Dylan behind without a proper goodbye, without a proper explanation of who she was becoming, without another kiss. Excitement and devastation tangled in her chest until she could barely breathe. She cried for hours, curled on the hotel bed, torn between the dream she had chased her entire life and the boy who made her feel like herself for the first time. Eventually, she picked up her phone with shaking hands. She dialed. He answered on the first ring. Jess? Her breath cracked. Dylan, I got the part. Oh my God, that's amazing! Jess, I'm so proud of... But I can't come home, she whispered. They want me to start right away. I won't be coming back. Not for a while. Maybe not for a long time. Silence. Not empty, just full of everything they didn't want to say. Dylan exhaled shakily. Jess, that's incredible and awful at the same time. Jessie wiped her cheeks. I know. I want both. I want you and I want this. And I can't have both. Dylan's voice broke. I know. Jessie pressed the phone tighter to her ear, tears falling again. I'm sorry. So am I. They cried quietly together, two hearts tangled across the country, knowing what had to happen next. We should let go, Jessie whispered. Yeah. Dylan swallowed. That's the right thing. For both of us. Jessie nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Okay. A long pause. Take care of yourself, Jess, Dylan whispered. And I'll miss you. Jessie closed her eyes, letting the ache settle deep inside her. I'll miss you too. And then, the line went quiet. Jessie set the phone down gently. And for the first time in her life, she cried, because she had finally become the girl she was meant to be, and the price was losing the boy she loved. Chapter 8. The distance between stardom and love, the first months of Jessie's transition, were a blur of hormones, new clothes, and endless learning curves. New York felt electric beneath her feet, the kind of place where people reinvented themselves between subway stops. But Jessie wasn't doing this in secret. With the blessing and, surprisingly, the excited support of the theatre company, Jessie decided to document her transition publicly. She posted clips of her voice training, makeup lessons, hormone updates, behind-the-scenes footage, and diary-style reflections on identity and courage. It was terrifying. It was liberating. And it was huge. Within months, Jessie became one of the most visible young actresses in the theatre world. Her honesty drew industry attention. Her talent kept it. And then came the invitation, handwritten, gold embossed, sent directly to her dressing room. An invitation to the most prestigious acting ceremony in the world. Jessie stared at the envelope for 5 minutes straight before bursting into tears. Everything she'd dreamed of was unfolding faster than she could process her transition, her rising fame, her career. But there was a hollow space beneath it all. Every night after rehearsals drained her dry, after interviews left her buzzing, after fan messages filled her inbox, she would curl up in bed, unlock her phone, and search one name, Dylan Hoffman, her first love, her biggest heartbreak. He posted often, mostly cars, sunrises, and behind-the-scenes shots of his filming days. Jessie devoured every post. But in the middle of the photos was a new face. A girl. A very pretty girl. Megan. She popped up in his videos, his group hangouts, his stories, always smiling too wide, always standing too close, always tagging him with far too obvious captions. Jessie stared at Megan's face with a strange, twisting ache. He can date whoever he wants. We were never together. He doesn't owe me anything. But knowing those things didn't stop the sting. It didn't stop the feeling that she'd lost him, or that she'd never really had him in the first place. Meanwhile, Dylan was having his own war with the universe. He watched Jessie from a distance, pretending not to. Her transition vlogs, her interviews, her rise to fame, her performances that were gaining critical acclaim. And he kept asking himself the same damn question: why didn't I ask her to stay? He could have said something. He could have asked her to be his. He could have told her he loved her before the world noticed her brilliance. He didn't. And now she was a rising star, while he was a college junior dodging a girl who refused to leave him alone. Megan was relentless, friendly to the point of aggression, funny in a way that made Dylan tired, charming in a way he wished he could appreciate. She showed up everywhere. She flirted constantly. She made her intentions clear in every possible way. And Dylan was too polite to shake her off properly. She wasn't bad. She just wasn't Jessie. She wasn't the girl he kissed on a boat under the sunset. She wasn't the girl he watched transform into her true self. She wasn't the girl whose absence hurt more than he'd ever admit. Eventually, the pressure became too much. The monotony of school, the memories of Jessie, the feeling that life was moving faster than academia could keep up with. So Dylan made a choice. He left university after 3 years. He went pro, and the world welcomed him. His car channel exploded in popularity, millions of followers, brand deals, sponsorships. His action shots were breathtaking, cinematic, unmistakably his. People called him the car poet, a filmmaker who made engines feel emotional and asphalt feel alive. With new success came bigger budgets. With bigger budgets came freedom. And with freedom came curiosity. Dylan turned his camera toward landscapes, toward forests, mountains, oceans, the places that reminded him of Jessie, of their shoots, of the girl who made art feel like magic. His nature cinematography went viral. Then it won awards. Then it earned him an invitation to one of the most elite artist showcases in Europe. And without even planning it, without even realizing it, Dylan finally did what he'd needed to do for a while. He sent Megan home. With kindness, with respect, with certainty. He was free, finally free, to face the girl he lost. They met in Paris. Of course it was Paris the city where the sky looked painted and the cobblestones felt like poetry. Jessie was there for the acting ceremony. Dylan was there for the art showcase. Neither knew the other would be in the same city until fate tugged a single thread and pulled them into the same place at the same moment. It was evening when they saw each other again, outside the Jardin de Luxembourg, the lamps glowing soft gold, the world humming quietly behind them. Jessie turned a corner and froze. Dylan was standing under a tree, camera hanging around his neck, looking sharper, undeniably handsome. His eyes widened the moment he saw her, the girl she had always been, now fully herself. Her hair soft and curled, her dress flowing and elegant, her figure confident, her smile trembling. He stepped toward her, stunned. Jessie, she closed the distance in a few quick steps, eyes shining with a mixture of anger, relief, longing, and something dangerously close to love. Then she smacked him in the chest with her tiny clutch purse. "It took you long enough," she said, voice cracking. Dylan laughed, half broken, half overjoyed, and pulled her into his arms. And Jessie held him like she was never letting go again. "I missed you so much," Jessie cried. Chapter 9. A love returned to them. The world fell in love with Jessie and Dylan almost as fast as they fell back in love with each other. It started as a rumour, a blurry photo of them sharing a croissant at a Paris café, Jessie laughing behind oversized sunglasses, Dylan leaning in with that unmistakable look of someone who finally had what he'd been waiting for. Then came the red carpet. Dylan arrived in a tailored black suit. Jessie stepped out in a champagne gown that shimmered like stardust, her hand slipping effortlessly into his as they walked into the gala together. One headline read, "The It Couple of Art A&D Theatre, Jessie Foster, A&D Dylan Hoffman, set Paris alight," another called them, "Beauty and the Cinematographer." They didn't hide, they didn't whisper, they didn't pretend. They kissed openly, held hands at events, spoke each other's names with a kind of quiet devotion that made the world collectively swoon. For Jessie, it was liberating. For Dylan, it was healing. For both of them, it was long overdue. Their schedules were chaos. Jessie in rehearsals in London, press events in New York, galas in Milan, Dylan filming in Dubai, capturing glaciers in Iceland, shooting sports cars in Tokyo and Thailand. Yet somehow, impossibly, They always found their way back to each other. A long weekend in Rome, a stolen night in Kyoto, a morning where Jessie flew to Vancouver just to watch Dylan film a sunrise sequence on the harbour. Every reunion felt like its own small universe, breathless, laughing, clinging, making up for all the time they lost. They would collapse into hotel beds and talk for hours, Jessie tracing the edges of Dylan's jaw while he played with her hair. The soft, warm touches, the whispered confessions, the way they shared space like they'd been made for each other. They never spoke explicitly about those nights to the public, but the glow in their interviews said everything. Jessie would blush when Dylan's name was mentioned. Dylan would smile quietly whenever someone asked about the woman who inspires your best work. They were in love, and everyone knew it. But fame was exhausting. Being seen every moment they stepped outside wore them down in ways they hadn't expected. So, one afternoon, after a whirlwind week in Los Angeles, Jessie turned to Dylan while they sat on the balcony of their hotel suite, legs tangled together. "We need a place that's ours," she murmured. Dylan nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Yeah, somewhere off the radar." They spent the next month searching. They finally found it on a winding road in the Santa Cruz Mountains, a modern glass and wood home perched high on a ridge, surrounded by towering redwoods, wild ferns, and a sky that looked like it belonged in a painting. It was enormous, private, secluded, breath-stealing, beautiful. Jessie walked through the front entrance and gasped. A wall of windows revealed the rolling hills below, the cliffside fog drifting over treetops like slow-moving silk. Dylan didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Jessie turned to him, eyes bright. This is it. So they bought it. Together. The house became their sanctuary. No paparazzi, no deadlines, no pressure. Just them, two souls who had walked different paths, grown in different worlds, and somehow found their way back into each other's arms. Jessie filled the space with softness, warm rugs, velvet sofas, hundreds of candles, shelves of books from every country she'd visited. Dylan filled it with art-framed photographs, landscape canvases, drones and lenses arranged lovingly like sculptures. He set up a studio overlooking the valley, where he would capture fog rolling through the woods at dawn. They built a life in the quiet moments, cooking together barefoot in the kitchen, sharing wine on the balcony wrapped in a blanket. Sitting in the hot tub under the stars, Jessie nestled against Dylan's chest, walking hand in hand through the forest trails behind the house. Jessie kept calling the house their hideaway in the clouds. Dylan called it home. And at night, when the world was far away and the redwoods whispered outside their window, they loved each other with all the passion they had held back for years. Slowly, tenderly, fiercely. Two hearts that had waited too long, now finally allowed to beat together. They made up for lost time in every touch, every kiss, every breathless whisper in the dark. The world saw them as the power couple of their generation, the rising actress and the visionary cinematographer. But in the Santa Cruz Mountains, away from the lights and noise, they were simply Jessie and Dylan, a girl who had finally found herself, a boy who had always seen her, and two souls who, despite everything, chose each other again and again and again. Final chapter. A Thanksgiving long overdue, the Land Cruiser hummed as it rolled up the familiar driveway to Dylan's parents' house. Jessie pressed her hand against the window, watching autumn leaves scatter across the lawn like a homecoming greeting. Dylan killed the engine and exhaled. "Ready?" Jessie squeezed his hand, soft and warm. "I've been ready for this since Paris." He smiled, brushing his thumb over her knuckles. "Let's go." The front door swung open before either of them reached the steps. Dylan's mother was there, apron, slippers, the same bright eyes Dylan had inherited. She froze for a half second when she saw Jessie, then her whole face lit up like sunrise. "Oh, sweetheart," she exclaimed, rushing forward. Jessie barely had time to blink before she was wrapped in a full, tight, motherly embrace, the kind of hug that felt like being claimed, welcomed, folded into the warmth of a family you'd been missing your entire life. Jessie let out a soft, involuntary breath, soaking it in. Dylan's mum pulled back just enough to hold Jessie's face between both hands. "You're even lovelier in person," she said, eyes shining. "Welcome home, dear." Jessie's throat tightened. "Thank you. I've been nervous about today." "Not anymore," Dylan's mum declared. "You're family now." Dylan's sister Claire barreled out next, waving both arms like an air traffic controller. "Oh my God, is this my new sister-in-law?" "Claire," Dylan warned. Jessie giggled, cheeks flushing. "Hi, I'm Jessie." Claire grabbed Jessie's hands with zero hesitation. You're gorgeous. I've been stalking your Instagram since forever. Teach me your hair routine. Teach me your voice exercises. Teach me how to walk in heels. Actually, teach me everything. Jessie laughed, warm and real for the first time in hours. Okay, but only if you teach me how to survive the Hoffman family volume level. Claire cackled. Deal. Dylan leaned against the porch rail, watching them with an expression equal parts amazement and quiet joy. His dad stepped outside last, tall and steady. He didn't say a word, just walked up to Dylan, placed a large warm hand on his shoulder, and pulled him into a firm, silent hug. Dylan closed his eyes. That was everything. That was enough. The silent approval of his dad. Inside, the house smelled like roasted turkey, sage stuffing, cinnamon, and home. Jessie followed Claire around the kitchen, like a new sister being initiated. Dylan's mum kept fussing over her, adjusting Jessie's scarf, offering her slippers, insisting she try the cranberry sauce before the boys eat all of it, and complimenting her earrings 3 separate times. Jessie felt herself glowing under the attention. She wasn't just welcomed, she was wanted. Every laugh, every story, every little here, sit next to me. It wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't realize she'd been cold without. At one point, Dylan found her in the kitchen, helping Claire fold napkins into fancy shapes. Having fun? He asked softly. Jessie looked up, eyes warm. Your family, they make me feel like I belong. You do, he murmured. Her cheeks flushed in that soft, rosy way that made Dylan's heart stutter. During dinner, Jessie fit seamlessly at Dylan's side. Claire asked about her acting roles. Dylan's mum asked if Jessie had baby pictures. Mum don't straight up ask that. And Jessie answered each question with ease, laughter, and a growing confidence she hadn't known she needed. Dylan kept stealing glances, the gentle way Jessie sat, the joy on her face, the ease in her laugh. He'd never seen her look more at home. After dessert, Dylan's mum squeezed Jessie's hand. I hope this isn't your last Thanksgiving with us. Jessie's voice softened. I hope so too. Later, Jessie and Dylan stepped out onto the quiet porch. The night air was crisp, the stars bright, the warmth from inside still clinging to their skin like a second layer. Jessie leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder. Dylan wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. She took a long breath. Your mum, your family, they made me feel so loved. You are loved, Dylan said, kissing her forehead. Jessie's eyes glimmered. I was scared they wouldn't accept me. Dylan shook his head gently. Jess, they didn't just accept you. They adored you. Jessie smiled. Soft, emotional, full. Then this, all of this, it feels perfect. Dylan brushed a thumb under her eye, where the faintest tear threatened to fall. You feel like home? Jessie's breath caught. You are my home. And under the quiet moonlight, wrapped in each other's warmth, surrounded by the echo of family laughter from inside, they knew this was the life they were always meant to come back to, together.